Well, first, thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to sort of like just get to come in and talk to you and talk to everybody about resumes, which, as Kendi and I were just talking about backstage, is definitely everyone's favorite activity to do this year in 2024. So, I'm really, really grateful that we have the opportunity that we do with the lobby. I wish there was a lobby when I was going through because I feel like so many of the hurdles that we all encounter every single day would have been a little bit easier because we'd be going through them together. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm Claire Davis. I own Traction Resume, which is an agency founded for people just like you in medical sales. Out of a sheer mission to help everybody land the roles that they really desire by checking off the boxes on things like resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, and interview prep. So I founded the company in 2016 after not such a wonderful story of my own experience in medical sales. I actually started as a recruiter and then went through into the industry myself and went through 5 layoffs in a row. So nobody really likes to brag about that, but one thing I can say about it is that it's really become it really forced me to put my skills into practice when it came to going from unemployed to getting back in the saddle again. And eventually, when you do something so many times, it becomes a routine. So today I'm really excited to share with you what I discovered after going through those 5 layoffs, after looking at more than 16,000 medical sales resumes, I kid you not, as a recruiter, and now being a career consultant and a resume agency owner myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Claire. You're serving such a need. I can't tell you how many people and reps reach out a day asking for help on resumes and looking for that guidance. I know it was never my strength, and so many other people, right? Sales reps are built to sell, not graphic designers, not built to write resumes. And so, we're so happy to have you in the lobby and a part of what we're building, which is just truly a central space for reps to find resources, right? Whether it's our networking events, whether it's job opportunities, resume writers, coaches, right? And we're so happy to have you in the lobby filling that void and being that resource for our community. I'm excited to learn today and with what you're going to share to our community, but really thank you for being here. You come from such a great background to see both sides of the fence. You've been on the rep side, you've been on the recruiting side, and now you're kind of merging all that with your experiences on both sides into your program today. And I know you've helped a lot of people, and excited to share some more information with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And one side I should probably mention as well is I am married to a provider now. And so it's funny because, when we first started dating, Chris would tell me all about the shenanigans that were going on in the OR and, oh my gosh, this rep said this thing and this rep's really helpful to me. And it's been a really interesting lens to be on that side as well. So what I can tell you for anybody out there who's navigating the job market right now, you're probably feeling a little bit deflated because it's intense competition. We're no stranger to challenge, right? You picked a tough industry, but that's because you're tough as well. But what I can tell you is that candidates are flooding the market. Like, there's incredible talent on the market. So if you're starting to think, gosh, where is my place in this? Or how do I realistically separate myself from the thousands of other candidates and the hundreds going for the jobs that I want? I just want to validate everybody watching that your influence in that OR, in that clinician's office, in that surgery center, is significant. There have been so many conversations that my husband and I have had where he is working in surgery, and that rep that has come in and been so loyal and is always prepared helps him out of a tight spot. So just know that what you're doing is challenging. The market itself is challenging, but it's also incredibly important. So if you're called to be in medical sales, and whatever that looks like, biotech, pharma, device, all of them, keep going. I feel like if it's in you, you owe it to yourself and to the world to go after it with all that you've got. So that's my TED Talk for thank God you are in this industry, and please don't give up on yourself. So let's tackle the hard part of the resume, because I think this is where a lot of us, unfortunately, miss opportunities purely because the resume seems to be this kind of tricky document to put together. And frankly, if you were writing a resume back in 2005, they look significantly different than even just 19 years ago. So today, what we're going to talk about is that system that I created after falling flat from 5 different layoffs, because what I recognized was, it's actually a lot like selling a product when we're selling ourselves. And so what happened was, as I was looking at all these resumes, as I was going through those layoffs, I recognized that there were 3 elements that when I focused on those 3 elements in my resume, it went from, I'm not hearing anything back, to, oh, I'm starting to get interviews. And all that I did was change my focus on the target. So Kendi, let me ask you, because I know that you're also an expert here. So say you're going into a new territory and you're trying to get in with a new office that you've never been in before. Yeah. If you had your choice, would you go in talking all about your product right away and pulling out your brochures and just telling them how much they needed to buy your product? Or would you go in with some questions and see what the need might be?
Young and dumb, Kendi, definitely went in, and what do they call it? The show up and throw up, right? That was the young and dumb early on in my career, was like, hey, I just tell them all about myself and all the features and benefits and spit everything at them. As I got older and wiser in my career and a little bit better at what I was doing, I learned to lead with questions, right? And really understanding customers' needs and really asking good questions before you start feature benefiting.
Yeah, I really feel like, well, first of all, I love that we've all done that for sure. Gone in, we're so excited, we can't wait to get those talking points out. But it's so refreshing when somebody is bringing a new solution to us, that they take the time to understand what it is that we need in the first place, So anyway, this applies directly to our resume. Most of the time, when we think about this document, we think, okay, I have to magically come up with all the perfect things to say to make me sound incredible, to position all my wins as like astronomically wonderful, or I'm going to leave everything off because I don't think I have very good numbers. Well, the good news is there's a lot more that you can measure than quota, but where I find the sticking point is we're starting in the wrong place. And instead of the show up and throw up, which we've all tried at one point in sales, what we want to do is first focus really, really closely on our target. So I'll tell you what I mean. Most people, for example, are considering that a hiring manager is going to hire us because they need to hire someone. And the main challenge that they have is they need to hire someone, and that is the box they are looking to check. But actually, if you think about it, the hiring manager has a couple other things on their mind. They're worried not just about hiring someone. They're usually concerned, and I pulled my clients for this, they're concerned about keeping people. They want to hire people who will stay, and they're trying to remotivate a team. And there's fierce competition out there. I mean, we all know the Me Too products that exist. And there's access problems everywhere, from the OR to the office itself, and COVID didn't make any of that easier. Not to mention that they are trying to look good for their boss. There's no manager on the planet that isn't also concerned about how they are showing up as a leader, not just to their teams, but to leadership itself. So first, we want to start and think about that target. What is our target thinking about? What are they worried about? And how can we, just like we would in a sales call, start to do our research on those things that the hiring team's concerned about, the company we're targeting is concerned about, so that they can be shown as the way that we solve that problem. So I'll give you an example. The Triple S system starts like this. It starts with 3 components. The first part is your story. The second part is your style. And the third part is your statistics. And every single one of these pillars is going to be hinged around the target and what the target cares about. Because nobody cares really about us. I love that quote. I forget who said it, Kendi, but somebody said, nobody really cares about us until we care about them. And it's the same thing when we're selling anything. It's the same thing when we're writing a resume as well. So if we think about what that story is that we're trying to tell on our resume, we're trying to tell them, yes, that we are an incredible professional with a great unique value proposition, but we're also trying to convey that we are relevant. So there's really 2 parts of this. So, if I came on here today and I talked about all of my incredible resume experience, and I've also been a recruiter and I was also in medical sales, but I was presenting to maybe a group of underwater basket weavers, right? It's not going to connect. And it almost doesn't matter how wonderful my experience is, because I'm not connecting the relevance to my target. So a couple things that you will want to ask yourself when you're trying to hone in on what part of your story you'll want to talk about. These are some questions. So the first one is, what problem is the hiring manager and the team facing? So again, kind of what we talked about right at the top. What is the hiring manager trying to achieve in this next role? Maybe you've done your research online and you find out that the company is introducing a new product. Or because we're all very, accustomed to hearing about layoffs and things like that, you might hear that the company is looking to, or recently has, downsized. Maybe they're right sizing and they're trying to do more with less. So what are some of the things they're trying to achieve? You can also ask yourself what the company or the hiring manager would solve by hiring you. So for example, if you know that some of their products are also going to be AI, incorporating, maybe you have taken a couple of certification courses, maybe you've got a background in SaaS or tech that would be relevant to this. And so then that becomes something relevant and a problem they may solve, right? You're fitting that puzzle piece that they don't have fit yet. The other piece you can ask yourself is, what kind of results are you known for generating? So this is one of my favorite things to ask when I'm interviewing a client is, what are some of the compliments that you tend to get frequently in business? And many times there'll be things like, people really like my positivity, or people really appreciate when I reach out and help them understand a difficult product and put it into layman's terms. Things like that. Things like that really matter when there are acquisitions, for example, because you're trying to gel 2 new teams. So there are lots of ways that we can sort of take not just what we do for work and not just what our historical wins have been, but make them relevant to the company and what their goals and their scenario is. And really the best places to find some of this information will be, asking AI platforms like Perplexity.ai is one of my favorite. You can Google, you can read some industry publications, and you can do your research on places like LinkedIn or wherever you get company and market intel. So before I go on, do you find that you hear, Kendi, that, people have trouble sort of expressing like what it is that matters about their career?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is, and what I'm loving is that, I think a lot of people make the mistake of just building a resume and just throwing it around and seeing what sticks, right? Throw it out there and just, even if they're completely different roles, completely different industries, whatever it may be, what I love about what you're saying is do some homework on the front end, right? Do some research, even taking the time to customize the resume for that specific job and that job description, right? But you got to do some homework and some research on the front end to understand those needs so that your resume is built to fill that gap. And like you said, if a hiring manager, they're hiring, there's a reason why, right? Companies don't just hire just to hire, right? They're hiring to fill a void. It's the case demand or expansion or new product, like you're saying. There is a reason, and so as a candidate, the more you can find out, the more you can network and reach out to reps or reach out to the company, or even, like you said, research online just to find out some information to really customize that resume and that story, as you're saying, specifically for that job. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the job description. You took the words right out of my mouth. Because you're right. It's not a one size fits approach when it comes, it's not a one size fits all approach when it comes to resume. There really are specifics that you're going to want to include. So making that resume tailored to the job that you're after really does become necessary, especially if you're applying online and you're going to that company website and you already know what a lot of the terms, what a lot of the requirements will be. That's great knowledge to have at your disposal. So don't miss the opportunity. And so you can put a lot of those things into, my favorite way is to actually just to copy and put it into a Word document, to then read through the list and ask myself, okay, what is an example of when I was able to, convert an enterprise account? Something specific. And something I notice often is that usually we find that when we're in this industry, there's a way that we tend to talk about our experience. We talk about KOLs, we talk about President's Club, we talk about collaborative efforts, we talk about matrixed organizations. All of that is really, really good. But where we tend to drop the ball, and I was guilty of this in those first couple layoffs as well. Where we tend to drop the ball is being specific about who we do it for. So the next part of this, I really want you guys to focus on who are you producing these kinds of results for, or who are you prepared to produce these kinds of results for? Oftentimes we work with people who want to pivot into medical sales, or maybe they want to go from, aesthetics to biopharma or into surgery. And so they say, well, I don't necessarily have specific experience for biopharma, or I don't necessarily have women's health experience, but I really want to get into, that kind of market. So what you can do is think about your experience as the way that you've always gotten results. Like, again, what are you known for doing that brings tremendous results for companies? And say that on your resume. And then mention that you're poised to do it for companies in the arena of your choice. The thing that will happen is that someone who's reading your document is going to instantly know what you're all about. They're going to know that you are targeting to bring your experience to this specific scenario. And that's really, really powerful, because as soon as we can get specific and connect the dots for our target, the better they know that we would be the obvious choice, the ideal hire for them. One note I do want to mention as just a word of caution before we move on is sometimes we can have aspirations to be in a specific medical sales industry, and sometimes that can translate in the opening statement as looking for a job in this industry. But honestly, Kendi, no one's ever hired me because I was looking to be hired. Like, it's just not the reason that we make decisions. So instead of positioning it as, I want something, or I need something, or I'm looking to be hired, if you change your mindset a little bit back to the target, and instead of talking about what you need, talk about what you bring them and what the value is that you're ready to deliver, you're going to find a whole lot better results.
I love this. One of my, looking at a lot of resumes, one of my pet peeves is the word customers. So many people put customers on their resume, and not that that's a bad word, but what does that mean? Who is it? Right? I think it's so important to identify who you're selling to, what you're selling. You know, so many, I think a lot of resumes are just very broad. And I think the more specific you can get them to what you've been doing, or like you're saying, if we're looking to pivot, what you want to do, there's so much value there.
Absolutely. You really have to get comfortable being specific. And you know what I love about this whole process, and really what came to light for me when I had to put it into place, was I was writing generic resumes too. I mean, I had read dozens and dozens of resumes, but I was really concerned that if I got specific in my messaging on my resume, that I was going to be turning off or turning away all kinds of other opportunities. But something really interesting happened, and I noticed that when I would get specific about the value I provide for a specific market and start mentioning things like, instead of customers, oncologists, gynecologic oncologists, right? Suddenly people knew what to do with me. You know, they were like, oh, she's not just a rep that, like, I don't know if she'd be a great fit. So then when I would go and pitch, you know, myself to companies like Agendia, they knew the relationships that I had weren't just strong, you know, long-term relationships, because I'm a relationship builder. They knew that I was able to break into the Sacramento hospitals with the gynecologic oncology groups, which are tough as nails to get into. So if you're starting to think, oh, I don't want to rule out other opportunities with my resume being too specific, is it going to pigeonhole me? I would say run the direction of specifics, and just think of, you know, if you were going to go into an oncologist's office and you said, I'm here and I sell pharmaceuticals, you know, they'd probably not know which hallway to direct you down yet, you know? So if you could be more specific about what you bring, people will know how to interpret your skill as, hey, is this woman or man going to be valuable to us or not? And
Yeah.
that's the move right there.
Yeah, and this is so good. You know, I'd say out of 100 resumes, I'd say 98% of them, maybe 99, are not doing this. So
Mhm.
right out of the gate, you can stand out, you know, from that crowd, right? You can
Yeah.
differentiate yourself. You know, our resumes are our first impression, right? Managers are reading through 100 of them. They got to scan them quickly. They got to get through them, and they're looking for some of these buzzwords, right? They're looking for that experience, and right out of the gate, you can stand out from all your competition. So this is such valuable advice, and I think it's great.
No, I
Uh,
love it.
all right, so that's story and style, right?
Yep.
So take us into statistics. I got a good feeling what this is, but tell me a bit more
Yep.
about how you coach this part.
Well, you know, this is why selfishly I love working with salespeople, because we already get that you have to be able to sell yourself based on your impact, which is wonderful. And what I find about salespeople as a breed is that we tend to, one, hate to brag, because if we were to go into an office and talk all about ourselves, they would show us the door. Like, we would never get past that front desk. And two, I find that we also tend not to give ourselves enough credit. And that can be a variety of factors, including often we're working with teams, so we don't know exactly how much of that team win we can take part of. Again, back to, I don't know if I want to sound braggy on this resume, like I wouldn't be braggy in person, am I bragging? Or, hey, I don't have a very clear quota. Or I don't have the kind of trackable metrics, or maybe you just had a bad quarter. I mean, how many of us have had like 3 winning quarters in a row and then like the fourth one's a real stinker? Like, it just happens, right? So with statistics, what we have to remember is that numbers are important to have on a document for a variety of reasons. Of course, they do actually stand out among letters, which is important. But really, the most important part is that it helps other people internalize our influence. So when somebody says, I have been able to convert 3% of the population of Texas to do one thing, that's a big deal. And the reason that's such a big deal is not only because it's an impressive statistic, but because the person reading it will start to think, I wonder if I could convert 3% of the hospital systems in my territory this year, like, well, I wonder what she's up to. Like, how are you doing that thing? And then they want to call you and find out. So for statistics, a couple of things I want everyone to remember. First, there are so many more things that you can measure in addition to quota. So if you either don't have a very clear quota, or your quota is a little bit delayed and you're really more focused on ranking, for perhaps you're in pharma, or if you just, aren't really sure what to measure because your quota, you didn't really hit it, or, maybe you're lower in the ranking right now and that's okay, then there are many, many other things you can mention. I have, in fact, a worksheet that I've prepared for the lobby. So if you would like to have that, we'll kind of tell you that at the end of how you can get a hold of this as well. It's my top 50 favorite things to measure other than quota that will excite someone reading your resume enough to give you a call, because they will understand that, oh my gosh, they are making an impact in these other measurable ways. The second thing I want everybody to remember is that generally we recall about 10% of what we read and we hear. This is often why speakers then would say, generally we recall 10% of what we see and what we hear, right? We would repeat that even, because when we're absorbing information, that's about how much we take home and take with us through our day and through the week. So the beauty of this in a document like a resume is people will make their decision based on the information that you give them. So if you think about all the things that you're responsible in your role for right now, so maybe you're a sole contributor, you're a rep, and you not only have to hit your quota, you've got to have strategic lunches, you've got to collaborate with your other teammates, you've got to bring in your medical liaisons to have those conversations, you've got to hit up those other lunch and learns, like you've got to be at those tumor boards, whatever it is. There is so much that you do, but I want to empower you to remember there's a ton that you can measure, and it's not all quota. So remember, of the 100% of your workload and what you're doing, getting the core top 10% that really shows the impact you're making is going to be huge for your document. And the beauty of this is that even though it's, modern day, you think most people know how to do this. I can tell you that when you start measuring things like this, and when you focus on numbers and the things that you can measure, you're going to be beating out 99% of your competition. I see it every day at every level. So there's a huge opportunity for you to create a really impactful resume. And then the third thing I want to share about your statistics is that it's actually very important the way that you write them. Sometimes I'll get a resume that comes across my desk, and Kendi, I'm sure you can relate to this as well. And it is, it's clearly someone who's been, doing well. They're almost too busy to get that resume together. And so it's this sort of like list of bullets, like so many different bullets, and they've got some metrics hidden in there, and they've got a lot of descriptions in there. And in the industry of resume writing, we call it death by bullets. And so when you share your accomplishments on your resume, you really want to keep them to a select few that greatly encapsulate what are the big heavy hitting wins that you've had. So one, for example, would be, one of the things that you would probably want to share would be the number of customers you've converted, perhaps, right? So instead of just saying that you giving the activity first and then eventually hiding the number within that, I recommend that you change the format of your bullet to focus on the number first. So talk about the quantifiable metric first. So maybe, 11% increase in business, and then the how you got it after. As people, we're sort of hardwired to tell stories the other way around. So like, this is the thing that I did and it resulted in that. And so when you're writing that resume bullet, flip that. And instead talk about what was the win by doing what kind of activity. So, I mean, I know you've seen all kinds of resumes, Kenny. I'm sure this is striking a chord.
Yeah, this is so good. I mean, I'm hearing everything, and this is just such good information that so few people are doing. And you just spot it when you see it, though. You're like, wow,
Yeah.
this person knew what they were doing, and it stands out right out of the gate.
Yeah, I agree. The next piece that we should probably talk about too is that if you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, Claire, I get it. I'm going to focus on my target and we're going to talk about results. If you're saying to yourself, but I just don't know what the results, like I don't have those numbers yet, then what you can do today is look at the resume that you do have, and you can even write the activities that you have, done in your job. Like, what are the activities that you've been doing? And I have two little phrases that are your absolute best friends when it comes to creating these bullets. The first is add the words resulting in at the end of your bullet. This is going to immediately jog your memory into thinking about what was the outcome of the thing that I was doing. Okay. And so if you think about, maybe you held weekly Zoom meetings with your team to increase collaboration. Well, what did that result in? Well, maybe it resulted in 3 combination dinners through territories that helped you win over a new KOL. Like, whatever it was, ask yourself what was the result, so you can actually put those words on the end of the activity statement. So whatever it was, resulting in, and then ask yourself, what was that result? The other word that you can add is despite. So a lot of times when we're telling a story, the only time it has gravity is when we talk about what we were up against. And if you're listening to this, you have been up against some tough stuff in this industry. And so adding the word despite is really helpful, because if you, for example, were selling in 2020, if you maybe didn't reach your quota, but you were able to sort of stabilize your business despite 99% office closures in the Northern Louisiana territory, that's huge. That tells me it's not that you just didn't hit your quota, it's that you stabilized your business despite massive closures to your clients. So try resulting in and try despite at the end of your statements if you're feeling stuck.
Those are great pieces of advice. I can see how that adds so much value to that bullet, on somebody's resume. Listening to you, I can think back. I used to collect baseball cards as a kid, right? And never on the back of the card did it say "good baseball player," right? Or successful baseball player. It was stats, right? You look at it was home runs, it was on base percentage, or strikeouts, whatever it may be. It was numbers, and it's the same thing. If you're going to tell me you're a good sales rep or a successful sales rep, don't just tell it to me, like prove it to me, right? And I think it's so important. Managers want to see that. You hear the phrase history of success, right? It's like they want to see that you've been able to be successful in your sales role now, even if it's selling copiers, printers, payroll, aesthetics, whatever specialty you're in. Show me that you've been successful. That manager wants that and wants to see that success. So it's so important to include on your resume.
Yep, absolutely. You've hit on one other key element I want to chat about really quickly before we go. And that is style. So we kind of touched on it a little bit before, and I was telling Kendi behind the scenes that we've got actually one of my templates that I've wired just for the Lobby Network. So if you want access to that, we can kind of come up with the way that we would like to get that over to you after this training. But what I want to introduce to you too is that you can really focus in on that target we talked about earlier with the style of your document as well. Because, if you go on Microsoft Word, or if you're looking for a template online and you go to canva.com, you're going to get a lot of sort of modern, beautiful looking templates, but they don't either parse well in the ATS systems that are used to sort of sort and match candidates with job descriptions, or they don't really speak to the look, the feel, the language of the target that you're going after. In fact, I was working with a group last week, and we can probably put some of these slides too that I shared with them, but we were looking at the difference between, for example, the Novartis website versus the Medtronic website. Novartis has these like beautiful oranges and blues and families hugging each other, and it's all about this sort of like innovation but community impact. Versus when you look at the Medtronic website, it's all about AI, it's the future, it's more, very clean and crisp, kind of like futuristic blues and whites. It's a very different look and feel. And I'm sure if you're watching, you've noticed that when things are marketed to you that just feel like, ooh, I really like that look, or that seems like it was written or created just for me, it probably was. And that's great marketing. So if we consider that this is marketing document for your career, you can leverage those same principles as well. And we call it leaning into the law of familiarity. So I would additionally recommend that, when you are putting your resume together, that you go out and you look at the websites of a couple of the companies that you're interested in. So you can start with the job description. That's great. That can give you that sort of flavor for the language. But if you go to press releases, if you look at the leadership that you can find on LinkedIn at companies, if you look at their website and their PR that they're sharing, you'll find that each company is nuanced, and you can leverage bits and pieces of this. So the look, you can, I think 85% of logos right now in healthcare are some derivative of like a blue or a periwinkle. Lean into that. Hot pink resume might sound really fun, but also build it for your customer, which is that hiring manager who's looking at you. And the interesting thing is that sometimes people will recognize when you are leveraging elements of their brand in your document, and sometimes not. And if they do, they will probably appreciate the detail orientation, right? So that's really showing that you pay attention to the details. But if they don't recognize it, then they're probably feeling, I don't know, but Kendi gosh, he's impressive, but also he just feels like he already is part of the team. Like he's just fits here. And it's a really wonderful way to fit in with that company and their look and their vibe and their energy before they even meet you.
I love that. And I think it goes back to like doing your research on the front end, right? Going
Yep.
back to that story and researching that information, researching those companies, and really being intentional about who you're applying to, right? What companies you're going after, not just throwing resume around. Like you're being
Yep.
very intentional about the company you want to be with, and who you're targeting and who you're building your resume for. Claire, I think this has just been so valuable. There's so much good information here. I'm so thankful that you've been able to share this message. For me, I can think back to, being a busy sales rep, most of my time in the OR, running around cases. I personally believe in coaches, right? I've had business coaches, sales coaches, financial coaches, whatever it may be, going to the expert and saying, hey, help me in this area. You're an expert here. And when I hear what kind of a glimpse into your program and what you're doing, it really sounds like a hands-on approach. This isn't like, hey, here's my resume, revise it and send it back to me, right? You're going to be asking some questions. We're going to get to know each other. We're going to build this story together. And really as a rep, that's what I would need, right? Somebody to kind of consult me, coach me through this process and help me put it together. Can you give, all of us an insight into what that looks like and how you kind of really work with candidates, maybe want to take a next step and work with you to kind of help really craft their resumes?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that we do it this way is because I find that when you are that busy rep, and if you're succeeding in business or you're working hard in business, everybody has a way of doing business that people love them for. They do. I've interviewed thousands of people and literally none of them do it the same way. So equally, I find that most often when we're really good at something, we don't recognize it as strategic or important. Because for us, it sort of just feels like run of the mill, or this just is sort of common sense. Like, how doesn't everybody think of it this way?
Yeah.
But rarely do they. So that's exactly what we tap into, because sometimes it's that old adage of, trying to read the label when you're in the jar. You know, when you're so close to that story, you don't recognize what's special about it because to you, it's ordinary. It's just who you are. So the first thing that we do is we do an in-depth interview with our clients because we want to figure out not just what the historical wins were, but also what mattered about those wins. What was the overall impact of what they accomplished in those 2.5 to 5 years in that role? And then we go into things like, what are your strengths? What do you think your strengths are? And also, what do you get complimented on a lot? And we go through things that will kind of illuminate what is the systematic way that you tend to win. And what I find that's really neat, Kendi, is that most people approach problem solving in a very similar way, despite the company that they're working for. So what we'll do is we identify, well, what is the way that you solve that problem? Oh, interesting. That's how you did it there and there and there. That's your system for success. And honestly, usually we're too close to it to pull that out of ourselves. So that's the first part. We interview our clients. We get to know them as people. We get to know what's really special about them. And we also get to know what the big impact is and what the context was involved when they were making those big strides in their career. And then we also find out, what do they want to do next? Because it's not just that you want to get another job. I mean, listen, we all have to, pay our bills. That's very important to find employment. But to find employment that you really enjoy is something altogether a little bit different. It takes a little bit more research. It takes, translating your story in that relevance we talked about earlier. So it's not just the next job that you kind of want to kick to the curb in 9 to 12 months, but it's a job that you feel this is the next step in your career, and one that you're really proud of that you took, and one that holds promise for where you want to go next. And then beyond that, we have a couple things that we collect from you as well, things like testimonials. We want to know what your job targets are, and then we do all that deep market research to make it all present you in the absolute best light so that you can achieve that next step.
So incredible. I mean,
it's a lot of fun.
There's so much value there that you're giving. You're helping people in such an impactful way, and there's lots of people that just write resumes. What I love about someone working with you is the industry, right? You know those companies, you know those spaces. And even though if a candidate doesn't know it, right, and maybe you can help them find that company. It's like, hey, you're interested in cardiac, you're interested in women's health. These are some companies you should look at, right? And really being a mentor and a guide, and not just give me a resume, I give you a resume back. And that's what I love about your program and the impact you're making on our community.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be able to pay it forward. I certainly had plenty of help when I was going through my career transition. So, I probably learned the hard way many, many times, and it feels so good to be able to turn around and create something really significant for somebody else on their career journey. So we really enjoy it. And do we overhaul many AI resumes these days? Yes, we do. But I can tell you that, in my experience, whenever you do tend to invest in yourself in an area where you want to see fast growth, significant growth, something that you can't achieve quickly by yourself. Every time that I've invested in myself, I've been the recipient of like a tenfold benefit from that. So from leadership coaching to public speaking to my own professional branding, it's really remarkable to see the results that people have when they decide to take that bet on themselves.
I love it. And so, anybody that has any questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat. We can certainly answer those before we wrap up. But my last question would you, Claire, you've given so many do's, right? Do this, do include this. What about the don'ts? What are some of the no-goes that you see on resumes that come to mind when you're like, please stop doing this. Please stop forgetting to include this, or whatever it may be. Give us some of those just red flags when you see them.
There are some red flags, and I always hate to critique anyone's resume too hard because, listen, this is a tough document to attack on your own in the first place. So please feel free to reach out. We'd love to help you with this. But as far as the don'ts, I would say Pictures for me, at least in the United States, are something that I would rather see left off of the resume. The reason is people make snap decisions on your picture either way. You know, in the same week, someone will tell me that I'm an old lady as equally as I'll hear that I'm just, you know, too young to own a business. Like, it's crazy, the perspective when you put a picture out there. So I like to leave pictures off the resume so that they are focusing instead on the results. Because listen, you really do have between 7 to 9, 10 seconds for someone to make that snap decision about who you are and if you're the person that they should keep reading about on this document. So we don't want them worrying about your hair color. We want them getting to the results.
Yeah.
That's where we want them spending their time. The next piece I would say is if you are starting your document with words that are like results driven. The thing is that you're more than that. And even more than that, most people start their resume off with results driven. So I would say take a little time and consult the template that we're going to share for the lobby. This is a lobby exclusive template that you can access, and it will help you with a Mad Lib style prompt. So you can start to think, okay, I'm not just results driven, like of course I am, but what is it about me that's unique and significant and special and relevant to this next role? Take a little time to tell that story at the top, and you will see that people will really want to talk to you because it makes sense for them. You're connecting those dots. The other piece I would say for don'ts is I wouldn't include experience that goes beyond 15 years. In terms of, you can include them in title and name of company, but I would focus primarily on 15 years to present. And when it's going to help with anything like, you know, age bias, which unfortunately is a reality. So you have a choice. You can leave those things off, or you can just sort of have them as sort of bylines a little bit and leave off the dates, because the most important thing are that people are looking at that more recent experience anyway. And then finally, if you are considering using color or special design, I would steer you clear of things like a double column resume. That doesn't lend itself necessarily to documents that people want to absorb. I won't bore you with all the science behind it, but go left to right and your reader will stay on your page more and longer, which is what we want. And if you are going to add colors, as we were kind of talking about adding a nuance of color here and there, I would stay away from the color red because it's jarring to most readers. And I would try to stay, with company colors or company adjacent colors. But if they do tend to go into the red, like if you're targeting Takeda tomorrow, you're going to see, well, now what do I do, Claire? Choose something that's, a little more palatable than red because it tends to be a little bit too jarring.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. There's so much knowledge there, and I love, your experience not only helping people early in their careers, later in their careers, and all stages in between, right? There's strategy around all of those different levels. So thank you so much. Guys, if you're interested in learning more about Triple S System, connecting with Claire, I've attached a link to her website in the chat. Also, everything can be found in the lobby. Claire, I'll get those documents for you. We'll package them all together. You can find Claire in the lobby. We'll attach these documents, attach these links, and so it really creates a one-stop shop for you. If you haven't registered, you're not in the platform, go to thelobbynetwork.com, create your profile, connect with Claire, find industry events, job opportunities. It's really a one-stop shop for you. Claire, thank you so much for attending today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you for everything you do to impact our industry.
Oh my gosh, thank you for creating the best network out there. I'm thrilled that there is a lobby, and Kendi, you're just making it incredibly easy for people to connect in an industry that was siloed for so long. So thank you for what you're doing. It's really, really wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that attended. Please connect with Claire, get some more information, and we'll see you in the lobby. Thank you.